enough. It was clear that without Allied help, the uprising was doomed.
The uprising was only planned to last 3 to 6 days. Then we were absolutely convinced that we would be given help, that there was an Allied agreement. All along we believed that we would get help from the West, and also from the East.
Britain had gone to war to defend Polish sovereignty. Now, the Polish government exiled in London put pressure on Churchill to support the freedom fighters. But although the Soviets had troops just 15 kilometers from Warsaw, British forces were thousands of miles away in France. Nonetheless, Churchill did what he could. On the 13th of August, at an Allied airbase in Brindisi, southern Italy, RAF bomb aimer Jim Orton was called to a briefing for a special operation.
We went into a hut where there was the briefing to take place, and on the wall at the end of the hut was a very big map and a tape, a pink tape, going from Brindisi to Warsaw. Then we were briefed by an officer who told us, "Tonight you will not be dropping bombs, you will be dropping supplies in Warsaw, where the Poles have started an uprising." Well, we all thought, there's nothing we can do really. Warsaw is too far away. We'll never get there and back in one hop. Then we were briefed by a Polish officer. He addressed us in poor English. He said, "For 13 days these people, they fight. If you will not help them, they die."
That evening, a group of Liberator and Halifax bombers set off. 6 hours later, they reached the beleaguered city.
What nobody had told us was that Warsaw was in flames. And when we opened the bomb doors, we could smell the smoke from the fires. Our crew of sergeants decided we were not going all that way to Poland to drop the supplies in the wrong place, to drop them so the Germans could get them. And we spent 50 minutes flying around over Warsaw while other aircraft were being shot down. We climbed up a little higher so we could have a better view of the whole of the city, and counting the bridges of the Vistula, we decided where Żoliborz was, which we understood to be in the hands of the insurgents, the Poles, and I dropped the supplies there.
Jim's crew turned for home.
When we landed at Brindisi, taxied to the end of the runway, and then the engines spluttered and conked out. We were truly out of fuel.
Jim had made it back. Just. But 256 of his colleagues were not so lucky. If the missions could be run from bases on Soviet-held territory, in Poland itself, the operations would be far less risky. Captain Hugh Lungi, a member of the British military mission in Moscow, approached the Soviets for permission.
I was on the telephone every day trying to get meetings with the Soviet authority, with the Ministry of Defense, and particularly our Air Force people, in order to demand landing rights in the territory held by the Red Army near Warsaw. Polish territory, but held by the Red Army. We weren't given an answer. Nobody, neither our ambassador nor our head of the military mission or anybody, was given any particular reason why these rights should be denied to our aircraft, who are, after all, helping not only the Poles, but in a sense we're helping the Red Army. All we got was this, well, perhaps we'll let you know. And then, no, we were refused.
The reason was simple. Stalin's plan was not to help create an independent Poland, but to take control of it himself. Only the freedom fighters, loyal to the Polish government in exile in London, stood in his way. With the Germans wiping them out, the last thing Stalin wanted was the Allies coming to their aid. And he knew that Churchill could not insist. 9 months earlier, the future of Poland had been conceded to the Soviets as an incentive to keep Stalin fighting on the side of the Allies. Winning the war against Germany was the bigger goal, and the Poles would pay the price.
Driving the Germans out, this is what we all wanted, including the Poles themselves. But all talk of an independent and free Poland was castles in the air, as they say. It was really a pipe dream.
By the 1st of September 1944, the battle for Warsaw had been raging for more than 4 weeks, and the Germans were steadily reclaiming the city, district by district. Having annihilated the suburb of Wola, their troops now attacked the Old Town, where 8,000 Polish freedom fighters were holding out. Facing a hopeless situation, the Polish command ordered a tactical retreat. But surrounded by the Germans, there was only one way out: underground. Crawling through the sewers, thousands managed to escape beneath German lines unnoticed.
We used the sewers a lot, and the Germans were scared to go down there. Firstly, they were afraid. Secondly, sewage looks and smells awful. Where there is running water, it's not so bad. It's just filthy water. But where there is just a thick, wet sludge, and you get covered in it.
The men and women who escaped reached the city centre, which was still in Polish hands. After weeks of desperate fighting, they emerged into an oasis of relative normality.
To us, the city centre was a complete shock. After the rubble of the old town, the ashes, ruins, we found ourselves in a town which seemed untouched. Undestroyed houses, electric light.
In the few remaining pockets of Warsaw still in Polish hands, people managed to enjoy some precious freedom. Though the battle for Warsaw's future raged only streets away, here there was time for the most ordinary of pleasures. Friends met, read papers printed by the free press, children played on the streets. People even found the time to marry.
My friend from another unit was engaged before the rising. She and her boyfriend had a normal wedding, married by a priest. Nobody thought about tomorrow.
Although some 5,500 freedom fighters had escaped through the sewers, they left behind over 2,000 soldiers too wounded to move, along with 35,000 civilians. Abandoned and defenseless, cowering in cellars and makeshift hospitals, they faced the German SS. The young German conscript Matthias Schenk was among the first to reach them.
We opened the door to the hospital, and out came a little white flag, followed by a Polish woman. She spoke very good German. She said, "There are Germans here too." So we went in and found ourselves in a large hall. There were so many wounded, Germans and Poles. The German wounded called out to us not to harm the Poles. Then Derlewanger's men came in and mowed them all down in their beds. No difference.
With resistance in the old town wiped out, the city centre now became the focus of attack.